Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Go 24/7 podcast. I'm Matthew Brune, and joining me for the first time on this podcast platform is Glen West. Glenn, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Matt. How about yourself? I'm glad to be a part of the team.
Yeah, man, it's been a week
A
now,
week,
only
a
a
week.
week
It's been a
now.
week.
How's your first week been?
Oh, you guys are just treating me too bad, man. I've been writing everything and
I
just
know.
not. I
Throw
mean,
it on you. That's
getting
what
no
we've been
help
doing.
from you guys right now. No, it's been great. It's been a lot of fun and really excited to kind of dive into the summer with you guys and really get acclimated. So it's been a really big, really fun first week.
Yeah, for sure. So, as I guess everybody who follows the site and everything knows, a big reason I was excited to get you in. Obviously, you're great with football and basketball. I mean, you did everything in Sports Illustrated, but especially when it comes to baseball, there's not too many that cover the beat better than you. So that's what I'm excited to get you here for, and to kind of give our readers and listeners obviously a more in-depth look at baseball. I can only do so much on the baseball beat. So yeah, we're gonna do like a kind of a Q&A type thing. Like I told you off air, it'll kind of be more so your thoughts here, going through the team, going through the regionals. We're recording this on Monday evening around 3 o'clock, a couple hours after the regionals were announced. So LSU was placed in the Hattiesburg Regional, which was kind of projected from a lot of places. It put them with the number one seed, Southern Miss. LSU is the 2 seed. Kennesaw State is the 3 seed, and Army is the 4 seed. Overall thoughts? I mean, reactions. What did you think of the region?
Yeah, so I guess first thought was, man, thank God they're not sending LSU to Oregon again. This is actually one that I'll be able to go to now. So got the hotels booked and everything, hoping to get over there this weekend and take in some good baseball. But yeah, I mean the last couple of years they'd sent us to Eugene and Corvallis, and I know LSU fans know what that kind of trip is like. So it's a lot better to be closer to home, and certainly I think LSU is going to pack up that stadium and be well represented. So, but just from a purely baseball standpoint, I think this is a very favorable draw for LSU. They could have gone in a lot of different ways. There's actually some really tough other regionals, with other SEC teams that are actually hosting, which is going to be really interesting to see. I think Auburn and Florida both drew some pretty tough. Some tough matchups, which is one of the things we kind of talked about, kind of amongst media and amongst fans and our community and everything. Just did LSU want to be one of those 16 teams that was hosting, but also run the risk of, bringing in some really tough teams, or did they want to be a group that, could go on the road and make a good impact and have a potential, chance to win on the road in a really, fun environment. And I think that, looking at these, teams that LSU is going to be playing, I think you can certainly make a case that they've got a great opportunity to go in here and steal a regional from Southern Miss. Obviously, Southern Miss is a really well coached, phenomenal team, and they've been very very good offensive program for all season really, and but it does play into what LSU's strengths are as well. LSU is a very consistent offensive team, particularly when you have the high caliber SEC hitters that they do, and so I do think it's going to be one of those weekends where the bats are going to control the weekend. I think whichever teams pitching staffs kind of show up and are able to limit the damage of these other guys or these other teams. It's really gonna kind of show who can come out of the weekend with the regional win and moving on in the tournament. So just kind of overall thoughts. I thought that it was a favorable draw for sure, and we'll kind of dive in, I think, a little bit more into Kennesaw State here in a few minutes. But just the Friday 6 p.m. is the first game. I think we have that information now. So
Mhm.
LSU is going to be the 2 seed taking on Kennesaw, the number 3 seed. So should be a lot of fun, and it's going to be a really interesting weekend.
Yeah, and kind of going off of what you said about people weren't really sure about if they wanted a 1 seed or not. Some of that was because of competition and because of the prospect of maybe facing a Southern Miss or a lower 1 seed, but
Right.
also just from what we read the board and everything like that, was if you end up getting in as the 16 number 1 seed to go against Tennessee, right? You
Yeah.
go with the 15, you go against the 2, and so on and so forth. Here, Southern Miss is the 11th 1 seed, and so the 11th ranked team. And then, if in theory, if you made it to Super Regional, you'd play Miami, who's the 7, and that's kind of a difference between Miami and Tennessee, obviously.
Right.
So I felt like that was another kind of favorable thing. So overall, when you look at it, I don't even go from regional to super regional. I don't know how much more favorable it could have gotten for this LSU team.
No, absolutely. And just kind of another little side note there for the Miami regional, who also is in that grouping, is Arizona.
Yeah.
And I know that there are a lot of journalists and media people alike who are just chomping at the bit to potentially see an Arizona versus LSU super regional next weekend. That would be really a fun story to kind of get to cover. And, Jay Johnson's first year. And that would be very interesting to see how all that works out. But I absolutely agree. I think it was a very favorable draw for LSU, and now it's just about them taking, playing their most consistent baseball of the season and taking this thing on the road.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, the regionals are a double elimination. Work through them that way. So they'll start with Kennesaw. LSU will start with Kennesaw State. They win. They play the winner of Southern Miss Army in that first game. And if they lose, they'll play the loser, obviously, and kind of work their way out from there in a double elimination setting. Let's get into Kennesaw State, though, because I think obviously it's not a Power Five team. I mean, Power Five is kind of a football term more than anything, but it's not a high major team. They end the year 35-26. What do you know about them, the 3 seed in this region?
Yeah, I've been doing a little bit of research on them this afternoon. I think, what really tells the story of this team is their offense. They're going to go as far as their offense takes them. They have about 4 or 5 guys that hit well over 300 and, have, combined for kind of, I want to say like 60 home runs on the season between those 5-6 guys. And so they're a very powerful team. They have a lot of capabilities, a lot of potential. I do think that LSU is going to have to certainly pitch one of its better guys in that first game. I don't think it's a game where you can save a Mikhail Hilliard, for instance. You want to get out to a fast start, and so they have a lot of guys that I think are capable of putting some damage on this pitching staff if LSU's not careful. And kind of one of the things that we've learned about this staff is they're pretty consistent out of the bullpen, but if guys can't get into the 3rd or 4th inning, it's kind of spells trouble for this group as a whole. And so, really going to have to lock in and get off to a good start against this team. And I do think this is an exploitable pitching staff. We've kind of talked all season about this LSU offense, but now that you're certainly set to welcome back 2 of the best hitters in the SEC, and Kay Doty and Jacob Berry, which we'll also touch on in a little bit, but certainly feel good about those guys playing and being able to attack a team that's kind of struggled as a staff overall. I mean, their team ERA is 6.08, which is not particularly great, but it's certainly exploitable, and it'll be very interesting to see just kind of how LSU can come prepared. And they played some really tough, some really solid teams this year. They played Georgia Tech, who's obviously a hosting team, or is going to be in the tournament. They've played a couple of times against Georgia, who's going to be in the tournament. They played Auburn. They've gotten some good teams, to kind of play them this year. So they are relatively battle tested. So should be an interesting first matchup, I think, for LSU. But obviously, this is also a team that kind of expects to win. I think a game like this, just based off of the talent that they've faced all year. We've talked to number of players today, and I think there's certainly a confidence here that after facing a really difficult SEC schedule, that they can go in and do some damage here this weekend.
So you would start and do you expect Hilliard to start game 1, and would you start him game 1?
Yes, I would expect him to start, and I absolutely would start him. We haven't gotten any confirmation from Jay Johnson. That's going to be something that comes out 90 minutes before first pitch, just like the SEC tournament. Don't want to show his hand to any team that he's playing. When we talked to Jay today, he was very blunt in his kind of conversation of saying, hey, I want to get to Omaha more than I want to breathe. That's kind of his thought process. That's this team's mentality. They are full force ahead into trying to get this thing into to Omaha in year 1. And the best way to do that is to coach to your strengths. And obviously his strength is to not give out any of the cards too early. So I think it's going to be really important for this this first game for LSU to get off to a hot start. On the mound, and I think Mikhail Hilliard's probably your guy. He's been your most consistent guy as a starter all season, and I think you got to play to that strength.
The last thing I'll ask before we get into kind of injury report type stuff, what is your number one concern for LSU right now at this moment?
It's a good question. I would probably say kind of end of the lineup, in terms of the batting order. Just in the same breath, at the same time, we haven't really had, a really consistent lineup the last several weeks with Doty and with Barry out. Dugas has been in and out of the lineup. I think they're hopeful that maybe Dugas can give it a shot. He hadn't done much the last couple days or couple weeks really, but I think really the end of the lineup is going to be the one that kind of how you parcel out that bottom 3 or 4 guys is going to be really important, just in terms of being able to turn the lineup over. I like what Tyler McManus has done for them. I think he's filled in beautifully as pretty much their starting catcher now all year, with Milazzo going down early. I think he's done a nice job at the plate, has really gotten more comfortable. So he's a guy that I could absolutely see in that kind of 8-9 hole range. But there are some questions about just consistency throughout the lineup, and they've had some very high ups, and they've had some very low downs, which you saw in the towards the latter 2 games of that SEC tournament. And so being able to find, I think, a guy or two that can help you turn the lineup over and keep innings alive is going to be really, really important this weekend. And so I would expect LSU to probably put a really solid hitter there in that 9 spot, just to potentially turn the lineup over to a Dylan Cruz / Barry / Doty / Morgan start. So I think you can extend innings in that way, and they're going to be looking to have every advantage that they can. And I think that's certainly one way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the consistency obviously is something we've talked about a lot this year. You go from ending the season getting swept by Ole Miss to, at home, to sweeping Vanderbilt on the road, and then going to the tournament, beat Kentucky, then lose to Kentucky. And it's just
another thing that I didn't really mention that you could obviously throw in there is the defense. And
at
this point in the season, you are who you are as a defensive team. I think this is a group that you can expect to make a few errors this weekend as well, and just not making sure that those errors come in 2-out situations with nobody on, as opposed to bases loaded with nobody on. It's going to be really important that those errors don't crop up in some really bad situations. And I think that is what could really make it an uneasy weekend, I think, for LSU fans just watching the games, just because we've seen it all year. They haven't been able to really correct them. We saw it in Hoover the last couple of games as well. So definitely got to be able to be a little bit more cleaner and see and hope that those errors don't kind of crop up on you at bad times.
Yeah, nothing drives our board crazier than the errors, man. Man, I just remember early in the season when they were happening, it was not fun.
You got to temper expectations. You can't really temper expectations at the beginning of the year, but I feel like now that you've seen this team for 50, 60 games, you kind of know what to expect. And so you kind of can go in there with a little bit more clearer mind. But, man, if that happens in a really tight situation, then it's all bets are off.
Yeah, not good. Let's get to the injury report. You mentioned it, Jacob Berry, Cade Doty. Obviously, I think Alex Milazzo will continue to be out. But what have you heard from those 3?
Yeah, so we talked with Jay today, Jay Johnson, head coach, and he was very optimistic that Cade Doty and Jacob Berry would be able to suit up. Part of the reason they didn't play at all in the SEC tournament was to make sure they were 100% healthy for this weekend, and certainly sounds like that's going to be the move here. I think both you're going to see play, and just I don't know if you're going to see Berry return to the field immediately. I think
that was my next question.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that needs maybe a couple days to really get back into the fielding motion. They're playing on turf too, which is going to be interesting. They haven't really played on many turf fields, and the fielding for that is a little bit different than just on a regular grass field. So it's going to be interesting. I think you could certainly see a scenario where Joe Bear goes back to designated hitter, where Barry kind of slides into right field again, and maybe you keep Collier Cranford at third base to kind of shore up some of the defensive, potential defensive mistakes you could have. So. I think you're going to see both of those guys return. Cade Doty will certainly slide back into his rightful place at second base, and I think continue to be a power hitter for this team and a guy who can get clutch hits. And you need that. You need every
Yeah.
possible advantage you can have in the postseason. And I think it's going to be crucial that LSU gets something out of those two guys this weekend.
Yeah. Looking at the pitching, we were asked this on our board. Shout out to everybody on the board that sent the questions, and I'm kind of just sprinkling them in as we go. You mentioned Hilliard starting, let's
Mm-hmm.
say day one against Kennesaw State. Where do they go from there? Who's your day two? Who's your day three? And just how does that kind of work out? Because I mean, it's obviously been changing at
Yeah.
times throughout the season.
It's been a revolving door, and I don't think really the SEC tournament gave you any easy feelings about what it could look like. I mean, I thought Ty Floyd looked solid for a few of the innings that he pitched, but eventually, what we've kind of learned with Ty is that he's going to kind of run into one of those innings where it's just hard for him to get off the field and hard for him to get outs. And if you're theoretically pitching McHale in that first game, you kind of want a steady arm in that next game because you'd be hopefully playing the winner of the first of the SMU
Mhm.
or the Southern Miss game, and you'd want to have a really solid arm in that situation. So I think you're going to have to consider Ty Floyd. I would also consider a veteran. These are the kind of time of year where you throw out wonky pitching rotations and kind of have a all hands on deck kind of
Yeah.
approach. And if you can get a really good game out of Hilliard and kind of save some of your big bullets for that next day, you could have very much a committee approach. And I kind of liken it to having a veteran in there. I think Trent Bittmeyer, I know a lot of guys on our board would probably disagree with this, but Devin Fontenot, maybe if he can go out and get you 2 solid innings or 3
Yeah.
solid innings. Devin certainly had his struggles this year, but he's a guy who's pitched in these situations before and has been very successful in the postseason. He was very solid last year in their regional against Oregon State, or against Oregon, and they obviously were able to win that one. And I think you got to rely on guys who have been there before and who know what those situations are like. And I think you could certainly see a situation where one of those veterans gets the game to start and just do a by committee approach, and then you kind of have to really, as far as game 3 or game 4, game 5, just kind of piece together whatever you have left. So it's really hard to answer a 3-man rotation, but would certainly start out with McHale and a veteran pitcher going in those first 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, that's as we know. I mean, if you win your first 2 games, you're in just a golden position to
Yeah.
advance at that point. So we know how important that second game will be if LSU can beat Kennesaw State in the first one. Obviously, if they lose, the second one's important as well. But still, that rotation is going to be just. I don't know what to expect from it at this point.
Yeah.
Now, I think
I
the
think Riley Cooper could be another name in there that you could see throwing in that second game. Coaching staff loves him. He's obviously been a huge piece out of their bullpen this year. But if you're going to go by committee in that second game, you want to get off to as great a start as possible. And I think Cooper could help get you the job and get the job done. Eric Reselman's another name that comes to mind if you really want to get off to a fast start. So there's just so many different ways they could go, and
yeah.
I think last week kind of proved that all bets are off with what this rotation is going to look like this weekend.
Yeah, there's so many names here. I'm looking at the Georgia game 3. Sam Dutton
Yeah,
was a guy that you threw out there. Grant
but,
Taylor.
Dutton's been very hot and cold recently.
Mhm.
My fellow big man Paul Gervais, 6'9" Paul Gervais. You want to intimidate Southern Miss or Army a little bit, throw the 6'9" guy out there first. We'll see. But yeah, they could go in so many different directions. It's
Yeah.
really hard to predict what the weekend rotation is going to look like.
Now, this is going to be kind of difficult, but I want to go through how it's going to play out in the field and just how the I don't want to say how the lineup's going to play out because obviously that could go some ways, but I think if you just get the 9 players that are going to be in the lineup, I think then fans have a general idea of what to expect here moving forward. So do you I think we can start with, do you expect Jacob Berry to be the DH if he plays?
I think so. I think that would probably be the smartest move to make, just because he's coming off of not playing in 2 weeks. He's already, he's gotten better as the season has gone on. But do you trust to throw him out there as a third baseman in Game 1 of the NCAA tournament after not playing for 2 weeks? I just not sure that you do. And I think Collier Cranford has shown you enough the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks to really, at least from a defensive perspective, hold that lineup down, hold that position down, and potentially, get on base once or twice too, which is really all you need from him. So, I do expect Jacob to DH. From an outfielder's perspective, I would say, Pearson Cruz and Pearson Cruz and Joe Bear could certainly be your outfield still. You could also slide Barry into the right field. I think that would be
Mm-hmm.
a serviceable move. If you really want to get him out on the field, I definitely think right field would be a better spot for him, maybe off of this injury, than sticking him at third base. As far as the infield is concerned, you're going to have Morgan, Doty, Thompson, Cranford. I think would be a great, to keep in there at third base. And then, behind the plate, Tyler McManus, you ride with the guy who's gotten you here. He's come up with some really clutch hits the last few weeks. Obviously is not, what Alex Milazzo is as a defensive catcher, but he's a guy that'll get on base and get you some runs. And he's serviceable enough, I think, to, get you through this weekend. So I think that's probably what you're looking at in the field.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I wanted to write all that down so
Yeah.
we had on the same page here.
Yep.
All right, man. Anything else here before we wrap it up? I'm trying to
I
think.
think just some, final thoughts. I guess, this is going to be a weekend that I think is going to be very well represented with LSU fans. I know we were at the ceremony today where they were kind of had the announcement ceremony and everything, and there were a few fans, a few boosters in there, and lots of people talking about already making reservations and getting over there. And certainly the players, I think, expect to see a large LSU crowd out there representing the team. So it's going to be a very fun weekend. I think it's postseason baseball in college is certainly one of the gems of getting to cover this sport. You get through 56 regular season games and conference tournaments to get to this point. And I know a lot of those guys are going to be really excited to hit the field, and we'll certainly have a lot of stuff coming this week before Friday's game. And we'll have boots on the ground. We'll have boots on the ground
On the
for Go
grass.
247 in baseball. So I guess
Yep.
that's a win. That's a win for us. So it'll be
Yep.
fun.
Yep. I'm excited. Southern Miss, obviously from Conference USA. My parents went to UTSA, and so UTSA got snubbed, did
Um,
not make it,
well,
and
very
even
good.
though,
I mean, I think Jay Johnson told us today there's 4 Conference USA teams in this tournament this year, and Southern Miss won the conference tournament, and so and won the conference. So I
yeah,
think it's going to be very interesting to see just kind of what that crowd is like and who kind of steps up for them. But I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great weekend, I think.
yeah, it's so crazy. Conference USA puts like baseball teams out consistently that are good.
Yeah.
Like Old Dominion didn't make it this year either, and they're usually up there. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm excited to watch. That's all we got for y'all today. We hope y'all enjoyed it. Hope this was an insightful look at the baseball team, the region, all the tournament outlook for them. I think it sets up well for LSU, and I think the expectations are going to be high, and rightfully so. This is what the year comes down to for this team. So with throughout all of the crazy twists and turns that this season gave us, now it's time to put up or shut up. So we'll see how it goes. You can follow us on Twitter at Go247. You can check out the site at Go247.com. If you're not a subscriber, check out our deals. We got first month for $1. We got for year for 30% off right now. You can interact with us us on the message boards throughout the games. Glenn is great on those. And we will have y'all covered, like Glenn said, boots on the ground for the tournament. So we're excited for that. So we appreciate y'all for joining us, and we'll talk to y'all later.